Welcome to Prerona Television Canada. On behalf of Global Academy of Holistic Leadership and Coaching Incorporated, we'd like to welcome you to our session, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion in Canada, a community dialogue series. This is our episode 1. Uh, Thank you very much for joining with us. This particular series, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Speaker Series, is first of its kind, and we are based in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Before we begin, we do have recognitions, land acknowledgement, and I would like to, with due respect, I would like to read that land acknowledgement. So we acknowledge Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Sitaw, and Nakota Sioux. We acknowledge that the territory is home to the Métis settlements and Métis Nation of Alberta. Region 2, 3, and 4 within the historical Northwest Métis homeland. We acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis and Inuit who have lived in and cared for those lands and generations. We are grateful for the traditional knowledge keepers and elders who are still with us today and those who have gone before us. We make this acknowledgement as an act of reconciliation and gratitude to those whose territory we reside on or are visiting. Before I begin, I think we'll do a 1 minute silence for some of the tragedy that happened recently, and we do acknowledge um, with our with great sorrow. And I have no words but to say that the discovery of the bodies that is found 215 and recent 750 unmarked graves has been found, and also some hate crimes is going on. So with all that, I would like you to for silence for 1 minute, and then we'll start our session. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, so on behalf of Global Academy of Holistic Leadership and Coaching, it is my honor and I'm humbled to have this series, Diversity, Equity, Inclusions, and Community Dialogue series. Today, our session, the purpose of this session is to is steps towards building a inclusive society. As we know that we lived in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and now some of our living in Calgary. So most of us in Alberta. So we do acknowledge that we want to like we would like to work in a community where we respect each other, we love each other, and work for each other. Our session will be divided into like a number of presentations actually. So first, each one of you will have some presentations, and after that, at the end, we'll have some discussion. So the first session is racism and equity, and this will be presented by Dr. H.M. Ashraf Ali. He's the he teaches at McQueen University. And the next presentation by role of education will be presented by Professor Dr. Shahidul Islam. He's a professor of McQueen University too. Uh, and then community perspective and challenges will be shared by Parveen Akhtar, and she is the president of Bangladesh Canada Association of Edmonton. And then after that, Anti-Bullying and Racism in Canada will be presented by Mr. Manwar Khan. He is activist and also anti-bullying award recipient. And then after that, Role of Youth and Law Enforcement Agency will be presented by Mr. Dwayne Peace. He's from Calgary. And then impact of mental health and dealing with trauma by ADL will be discussed, will be shared by Karesti Walker. And the keynote speech or the presentation by Role of Government and Policy Advocacy will be presented by Honorable Rod Loyola, Member of Legislative Assembly, Edmonton, LRC. And then we'll have discussions, if you have any questions, we have discussion, and then we'll have closing remarks. As we know that these particular sessions, we have a number of honor, respected people. So let me introduce briefly some of you. I don't know many of you, but I will share with you a very brief discussion. Then individually, I will request you before you start your session, please introduce yourself and how you are related or how you're working towards diversity, equity, and inclusion. So the first, Mr. Honorable Rod Lala, he's honorable like a member of Legislative Assembly, Edmonton, LSD, and he's been working, if I am correct, he's been working in universities, a number of associations, and some other field in Canada. So it is our honor that he's with us. And also the next I will be introducing one of the senior most person is Dr. Professor Dr. Shahidul Islam. He is from McQueen University. He has a lot of experience, international experience, um, and civil rights, and also he teaches. I think if I'm not mistaken, he's an agree. I'm sorry. He teaches at McQueen University, and I will request him to share his details when he has time. The next person that I'd like to introduce you is Professor Dr. H.M. Ashraf Ali. He teaches at Macquarie University and University of Alberta, and he teaches anthropology, and one of his course actually diversity, like racism. He teaches at Macquarie University, so it's very much related. He's very knowledgeable. He also worked for the government of Alberta a number of projects, so he has a lot of experience. And then also the next person I like to introduce with is Dwayne Pace. He's a retired police officer, and he has an organization, and his organization he's working for the youth, and he has a lot of experience. He's not only the police services; he's very much involved in the community. So, and he's working for with these organizations, youth, and also education, field of education. So I think he worked a number of years after his service. He worked with that organization. So he's knowledgeable person, and we'd like to hear from him. His organization is Life Synergy for Youth Incorporate. And the next person I would like to introduce is one of the very knowledgeable person is Karesti Walker, and Karesti is she's from Calgary too, and she is one of those like arbitrator and mediator, and she's involved in many other organizations, but she has a lot of expertise in the field of arbitrations, mediation, ADL. So she has a lot of designations, and one of those organizations that I work with her is Alberta Mental Health Coalition. And so I will request Karisti to introduce herself in details more. And the next person that I would like to introduce with you is Ms. Parveen Akhtar. She's the president of Bangladesh Canada Association of Alberta in Edmonton. So she represents a greater Bangladesh community in Edmonton. There's a lot of like couple of thousand Bangladesh people, if not mistaken. I'm not sure how many, but not at least maybe 10,000 or 15th, I don't know. There'll be a lot of Bangladeshi communities living in Edmonton, so she represents Bangladeshi Canadian community. So, and she's doing a lot of voluntary and community work. So we'll be hearing from Parveen Akhtar. And not the least, I'd also like to introduce Mr. Monwar Khan. And she's a civil servant. She worked for the government, and also she has a lot of experience in anti-bullying activity as an anti-bullying activist, and she has been presenting himself as a vocalist and also a representative for anti-bullying and other racism activities. And also he is a governor general recipient of one of those award. So we are very honored and very happy that you will be sharing your experience with us. So thank you very much. So let's begin. Our first presentation. The first presentation will be presented by Mr. Professor Ashraf H.M. Ashraf Ali, Racism and Equity. And you can share, if any one of you want to share your presentations, you are all allowed. So you can share your presentation. Thank you.
Hello, can you see my slide here? Yes. Can you hear me? Okay. Good. Okay, so my name is H.M. Ashraf Ali.
Yes.
Good. I'm teaching since I have been teaching anthropology at Grand Macquarie University since 2016 January. Previously, I have also taught at the University of Alberta. I'm at the Department of Anthropology. I'm still there as a instructor. I'm the sessional instructor listed. So, and in addition, my another kind of introduction, I would say, like last year I was the president of Bangladesh Canada Association of Edmonton. And currently I am still in this executive committee as an ex officio. I have been working with the Bangladesh Canada Association since 2016 and have a lot of engagement with the communities in different capacities, as well as in terms of understanding racism or racial discrimination or hate crime, all those stuff. I'm uh, teaching anthropology. So at part of that, I am teaching race and racism in the modern world as a course almost every semester. So recently, racism and hate crime is a big issue here in Canada in different major cities. So briefly in my presentation, I briefly go over some of the aspect, and later part I'll briefly talk about some of the pathways or policy recommendation that how we can actually address this kind of racial discrimination here in Canada. So let's start. Briefly, kind of theoretical or conceptual clarification, what is hate crime actually. So it is in according to federal like code of criminal code of law. I mean, here in Canada, hate crime is defined as like committed intimidate, harm, or terrify not only as a person but an entire group of people to which the victim belongs. It is also a criminal offense to incite hatred against a group of people based on their race, religion, color, ethnic origin, or sexual orientation. So it's clearly you see that recently the incidents that happened basically against the Muslim people here in Canada, in Toronto, and recently here in Edmonton, even in St. Alberta in last Wednesday. those are based on religious kind of trait, and kind of racism originated basically from this kind of cultural identity, I mean the religious identity. So the racism basically uh, based on kind of beliefs or like the prejudice, is not based on any scientific evidence, right? So people think that some group of people are superior to other group of people, so based on certain characteristics. Those could be like the physical characteristics, or like the psychological or linguistic or religious features or identity. So this is part of basically racism, right? The things that are going on. Sometimes people could be confused. Okay, so racism means like your skin color, but actually racism could be any elements, like religious elements, linguistic elements, or maybe religious elements. So people based on their different identities, because of their different ethnic origin, linguistic origin, or religious origin, so people could be treated differently in different setting. So this is the main thing. So obviously, if you discriminate or treat people differently, create some kind of problems, or maybe try to terrify or like the harm the person based on their identity, so you are doing this kind of crime, right? So that's the main things. And so it's kind of new racism according to academic research and our understanding, theoretical as well as like the experiential understanding. So racism kind of religious identity or cultural identity incorporated into the definition of racism in recent times. In 18th century and 19th century, racism was based on basically physical characteristics, skin color, or geographical origin. But in recent times, like in 20th or 21st century, new dimension added, or new elements added in the definition of racism. So you see, according to the British-based Runnymede Trust, Islamophobia is the big issue. So people thought, okay, if you are Muslim or like you are follower of Islam, so you are something different. You are doing something extreme, or like the that's not acceptable here in Canada. Something like people they have those kind of ideas, right? So often they have idea, okay, Islam based on Quran, so whatever is written in Quran, so people cannot go beyond that. So those kind of ideas people have, right? Misconception people have, right? Often. So these are some of the characteristics. I'm not going to read everything, but the key point is that like people many people, I'm not indicating any particular group of people. So people have misconception about the religion of Islam. So and that's why they fear about that, they scare about that, or like that's why they treat those people differently. They don't want to accept them, like the immigrants, people coming from other part of the world here in Canada. When they practicing their cultural stuff, think about like the people are in hijab. So when people are in hijab and they are walking on the street, so they think, oh, this kind of people are different, and they should not be here. In many contexts, it could be psychological reason, maybe like the employment reason. They thought, okay, why they are here. Think about when Syrian refugees here came in 2015. Many people like are against those kind of decision, why they will be here. So because they will share our resource, the Canadian government they will have to provide like the money, shelters, housing, all those stuff. So our tax money will go for them, right? Go to them. So those kind of issues raise, like sometimes host society cannot accept other people, other religion, people of other color, other language. So those are the reason, including these people, those who are follower Islam, religion of Islam. So these are the things happened, and that's why sometimes people become aggressive, and they do. And we are observing and we are noticing all those things happening around us, even in Edmonton here. Like the many people are reacting against those people, those who are practicing their own religion, or they have different identity, the different cultural practice. So here is the quick look. I did not include any recent events, but we already know everything happening in CBC report and TV news report, electronic media, social media, everywhere you know that something happening. And this is just a comparison what is going on. See, the since 2014 to 2018, see the number of hate crimes, like hate crime has been like the increase significantly. It started with here like on 1,000, sorry, here like 1,295, right, in uh, 2014, and here in 2018. Sorry, this should be comma. It's full stop. I'm sorry for that. 1,798, almost 1,800. The number 600 or almost 500 increased. The incidence of hate crime has increased over the years. So things are not reducing; it's increasing. Trends is very concerning. Although government has multiculturalism policy, they have all the time they're talking about that everyone should be treated equally in every place, in workplace or like in hospital settings, in every sector of public life should be treated everyone equally, right? So, but things are going opposite. And also race or ethnicity, the number is also increasing. If you see in 2014, it is 611, and although the number is not that many, but still its number is showing that increase. In 2017, it was 842. So that is how things are going. Religious, religion-based like hate crime. So you see 429 in 2014, and 2018 it was 639. So that is the trend, like the trend is increasing. So, and also sexual orientation, language, and disability, sex, all those stuff like age and other types of indicator showing that the number of hate crime is increasing in here in Canada. So I'm quickly going to talk about like what are some of the things. It's not something that we can provide like the all things can fit in one place. Like some of the ideas, there could be many other things that you can use. But according to my understanding, what is the main issues? Like race. When you talk about like the human population, genetically we are not different. We are 99.99% similar genetically. Okay, so scientifically we are not different. Our skin color could be different, our religion could be different. That's our environmental factors, cultural factors. A belief system could be different from many reasons. So this is not biologically fixed, right? So there is only one human population or human group in this world. So we cannot classify people into different categories and saying, okay, this group of people is superior and this group of people is inferior. We cannot say that. So like there is more differences within the population than the between the population. So if you look at the genetic or scientific evidence, there is only one human in this world, right? That when if you look at the origin or evolutionary theory, whatever. So that's how we need to look at. So currently we have more than 200 different ethnic groups in Canada, and diversity is beauty. So Canada can feel proud, Canadian can feel proud of that, right? So we have so many group of people from different part of the world with different ethnicity, ethnic identity, culture identity. So that's our beauty. That's diversity is our benefit, right? In terms of like the economic productivity, in terms of cultural diversity, beautification, or like the continuation of cultural heritage, all this stuff. So we must think that we respect that. Yes, we respect every people and their religion, their culture, all this stuff. Unless any culture harm you, right? Anything that if it is not against your constitution, if it is not against any other human being, so you should appreciate that cultural practice. So what we need to do, we do that. We respect that. We believe in equality for all. So there is no difference in human being. Collective action, uh, need to mobilize. That is means like we all need to work together. That's not only, for example, like the hate crime is happening against a Muslim, only Muslim people will not work, right? So people from all religion, all ethnicity, like all nationalities, they should work together. Government, provincial government, or like the local government and federal government, all should support all those stuff. So that's one of the things. Collective action, without collective action and without incorporation of inclusion people from different different ethnic groups, as well as different areas, like from root to like the top to bottom, from every places, some kind of representation we need to act against these kind of things. And is speaking out against what is happening on all sides, right? So you need to be proactive, right? You should not like the passively accept all kind of injustice. You need to like the voice out, like raise your voice against any kind of injustice, not only against like happening things that happening against Muslim people. If it is happening in like white people, like anything, like some people did something wrong against white people, you should talk about that. You should stand with those people, those who are victims. So that's one of the important stuff. We should not just be silent, right? If you accept something without any protest, any kind of like raising voice, so that means you are supporting that kind of injustice, right? So again, a structure or hierarchy that society is built on must change in order to end discrimination or racism, all this stuff. I'm not saying that entirely changing like Karl Marx or socialism need to bring. I'm not saying that, but in terms of like the creating superiority or inferiority, we need to think about that. Like we all are equal in terms of like the human or like human being, and in terms of culture, every culture has its own value and its on significance and context and historical context or significance. So we need to respect all those stuff. So some of other like the hands-on, like the short term, for example, like anti-racist education. You can actually train people in school or like in workplace, in other time, like in social media or like the public places. So we need to give the message to the people that inequality or power difference actually create some kind of discrimination against each other, and we need to address those kind of issues. And obviously, we need to teach people that, as I said, like this is also part of the education. It could be at the the university level or high school or even in elementary school. We need to teach that. Even if we need to change our curriculum, we need to change our institutional procedures, all this stuff. Institutional sense, if needed, government can do that. And from community level, people need to work together to provide this kind of message to every kind of people. And obviously, the legislation has obviously Loyola will honor respectable person. He will talk about that. He's MLA, so he has a lot of knowledge about that. Obviously, it has significant role in terms of like addressing this kind of discrimination in our society. So government can take effective measures, and law enforcement agency, they have a lot of roles in terms of addressing this kind of issues, right? In terms of community level, like every sector from the community level, people can work together. They might have some kind of organization such as Bangladesh Canada Association. They often have some kind of cultural program, Bangla school, or like other kind of education program. They can play a significant role in teaching those kind of things within their community, as well as some kind of cultural exchange with other communities about those kind of things. So community level, I mean the family and community level activity, a collective activity, and that can connect to the larger society at one point. So they can exchange views and perspective about this kind of things, what their culture is. If some people have misconception about your culture, think about hijab, why people are hijab, so why that this, if this is extreme things or something like that, if you talk to people, you can clear many things. So you can change your views about other group of people. If you see, okay, this group is like that, so if you keep yourself distance and if you don't want to talk to them, that will create problem instead of solving those kind of issues. So that's all. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening to me. So if you have any question, you can ask me, or maybe like later. Okay, thank you. I'm stop sharing.
Right. Thank you very much. Now I would like to request Professor Dr. Shahidul Islam. He is a professor of McEwen University. He has a lot of experience, international and national. So I would like to invite him to uh, discuss role of education. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you see my slide?
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
That's good. I'll just show only 2 slides. So that's why I'm not going to go with the full screen. So first of all, thank you all very much, and good evening to you all, those of you who are here and those of you who are away. I must echo the land acknowledgement that Mr. Mondal has made. And I would also like to remember the victims of London murder and all the hate crimes that has happened around. And I acknowledge the presentation Honorable Rod Loyola made at the Alberta Legislative Assembly. So with this, I will begin my talk. My topic actually is diversity, equity, inclusion, the role of education. Dr. Ali has talked about fairly well detailed about the racism and hate. I will not go into any particular area. I'll just try to give an overall view. But before that, I think I should give you a little bit of my introduction. As you know, my name is Shahidul Islam. I teach at McEwen University. I have been with the university for over 20 years now, and I'm an associate professor there. And I teach several courses. My area of expertise is agricultural economics, resource economics, energy economics, environmental economics. I also teach courses in urban economics and economics of project evaluation. As far as community activity goes, I have been active. I was the president of Bangladesh Canada Association in 2004. That's a long time ago. We just published a book on the evolution of Bangladeshi Canadian community in Edmonton 2 years ago in our 40th anniversary celebration. So I think that's good enough about my introduction. If anybody would like to know, by all means, no hesitation. My email is public, and it's the same email for over 25 years, so anyone can reach me. That should not be a problem. So let me go directly to the topic. The topic is diversity, equity, and inclusion, the role of education. So when I was looking at it, and I'm thinking that there are actually 4 key words in this: the diversity, equity, inclusion, and of course, education is going to be part of it. So I would like to begin with education, and then eventually we'll talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and come back to education. That's what I will be doing in this very short presentation. And the approach that I will do, let me go to my next, I don't know how to advance to this slide. Oh yeah. So the approach that I will take, what I call a DRS approach, which is definition, recognition, and solution. And I will share my thought on how I would like to see these diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how those should be defining, those should be recognizing, and what could be some broad possible solutions. Dr. Ali has alluded some of the solutions. I will not go through any of the specific. Okay. So let's begin with the education first, because we want to begin with the education and then circle back to the education. So first of all, what is education? Education, if I remember from my second year undergraduate over almost 50 years ago, Education is the production of desirable change in human behavior, skills, and attitudes. So there are three keywords within it: behavior, skills, and attitudes. The reason I'm bringing it here, that I do not see actually the same definition used in today's society. I'm an academician. I teach at university. So I do always think of what we are doing and what our policymakers are telling us to do. Today, universities are supposed to be developing only skills, no behavior, no attitude. And to my understanding, that's one of the big rooted issue of having all these equity, diversity, and inclusion problems. If we really understand what our education should be doing us, how we should be developing our behavior, what our attitude should be, I think we should be much better situation to deal with the equity, diversity, and inclusion. So that's one of the philosophical side. The reason I'm saying, if I want to back up those in my idea, that well, is our education really changing our behavior? Our education system, right from the K through 12, teaches more of the rights rather than responsibilities. Rights are something that we often get on our own interest. Responsibilities typically we do not get, so we have to teach them responsibility. Okay. We also know that every right comes with responsibilities. Right cannot be without responsibilities. I see like when a small child goes from one grade to the next grade, whatever they do, because a year older, that's why you go to the next grade. The child naturally learns, well, does not have to do anything. I'm going to the next grade anyway. So the responsibility seed has to be sown right at the beginning, right at the school level. I see when I teach a group of first year students, I see they're shocked because the situation they get at the schools, they're completely at a different situation they get at the university. So those are some of the fundamental things. It's not something that one individual can do, but I'm identifying these that at some point probably people will be able to look into it. That's what the idea. I think our education system needs to be changed. Okay. Now, I will come back to education, so I'll leave it here and then let's move on and go to the diversity. What is diversity? What do we understand about diversity? Okay, first of all, yes, I do agree with Dr. Ashraf Ali that we as human beings, we have many more common than differences. Yes, that's very true. But what happens if we try to start beginning our dialogue, beginning our talk, beginning our action from that premise that we are all equal? Indeed, we are not all equal. We are made with the same genetic material, the same 4 DNA code. The same way all computer programs are made with the same 2 binary letters, 0 and 1, but they are not the same. Exactly, we do not want to begin with the premise that all human beings are identical. They are not identical. We are all different. Even 2 identical twins, they are genetically identical, but there is still different. There is some difference we find. So what my purpose of bringing this here, that we should be starting with the premise that we are different. And if somebody is different than us, that does not mean that somebody is inferior or superior to me. So we have to learn how to respect the differences. First of all, that's why I'm bringing that. Well, we have to define that we are different, and we have to recognize that we are different. And we have to respect that. Until and unless we do that, we won't find any solutions to it. Okay. So the second one, if we go to equity, which says fair access, opportunity, advancement, like that. Now, keep in mind that we are talking about a value-laden term, fairness. Today, we measure most of these things in terms of quantity, in terms of number. That's what we tend to value. Not everything can be valued in terms of numbers. There are something that has what we call the objective values. There are something that has values that you simply cannot measure. Okay. Fairness, how do we measure fairness? Okay. Fairness is more of an attitudinal term, more of a behavioral term, more of a value legend term, more of a value judgment term. That's what we see. Today, in each and every word, when I see, for example, even in each and every cases that we see that we make our decision what? Democratically. That's what we see. Democracy is what? Majority rules the minority. So 8 of us, we are sitting here. If 5 of us decides that we will be hurting the other 3, that's a democratic decision, majority decision, but is that fair? No. So what I'm saying, I'm not actually anti-democratic, or I'm not saying that democracy is bad. What I'm alluding to, that we should not be based on anything taking as granted that, well, there is no exception. There is always exceptions. Every social science theory has its applications and has its limitations. We have to understand the limitations of it. So often we do not actually go to the limitation part of it. Once we win with 50.1% vote, we think that, well, we became the ruler of the entire 100%. We just ignored the 49.9%. That's not fair. And that thing has to be brought into the picture. So every decision you can make democratically. I'm not saying that democracy should be eliminated, but we must be recognizing that there are people, they actually opposed to it, and what they're reasoning, how we can value them. And I'm not talking about only in politics. In every different cases, that's what we actually do. So we have to keep that in mind. And if we really keep that in mind, then we will see that our diversity, equity, and inclusion will be taken care of a whole lot. So I'm talking more about more types of kind of philosophical side. The third one, if we go to the inclusion, which is a welcoming environment for everyone. So treated with respect, everyone should get the opportunity. I'm not saying equal opportunity. The opportunity cases, there should be equity as well. And equity should not be equating with equality. Equality is a different thing. Equity is a value-laden thing. Equality is more kind of a quantitative thing. There are people, sometimes they would say that, well, equity is kind of a process and equality is the result. I don't believe that equality is the result. You don't have to be equal, but it has to be equitable, fair, and the fairness and equity, that has to be judged by the society, not by individual, not by me or one person, because I know that what is fair to me may not be fair to another person. And that has to be recognized, and that can only happen when there is appropriate educational level. So that's why at the end, I want to come back to education. So if we think about, just because I deal with on a daily basis, most of the time in classrooms with the students, so most of my examples could be drawn from here. So I could say, for example, when we teach, in our school system, we have programs for special needs children. So if somebody is there, we are already stigmatizing that student is a special needs student. When I go to university, we say there is a student with what we call they need accessibility and disability resources. So we are categorizing a student like that. Okay. And that by itself is actually classifying people. All that we are different, they are different. The way I am different. So the way that I am supposed to be respected, exactly the same way that individual is supposed to be respected. So how do we do that? Well, there are different procedures coming in. For example, we talk about the universal design of learning. Universal design of learning is targeted that every student gets the same opportunity. Now, one thing, I'll give you a very common example, that when we teach a course and we recommend a textbook, Today, when a student wants to buy a textbook, it costs hundreds of dollars, rarely below 100, sometimes 200, sometimes 300. Now, for some student, it may not be that big of an issue, but for some student, it might be a huge issue. And we don't know that. So if we want to come up with a certain situation that, well, we do not want to put that burden on the student's shoulder. Either we have the book available in the library or through the electronic media or whatever it is. So irrespective of their income level or their parents' income level, they have the access to the same resources or equal access to the same resources. This is just one tiny example of universal design of learning. So these are some of the things that we could do here. Now, one thing we have to understand that as an educator, we are actually leaders, and education system is supposed to be playing the major role. And that's why I started with education, and I want to conclude with the education. Education system is system as such, plus those who are educators. So all educators are supposed to be leaders. And we know the definition of a leader is who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. So a leader who knows what to do, first of all. So everybody, whoever is involved in the education system should be well aware about the diversity, equity, and inclusion issues with their appropriate premise and meaning. And then they have to apply that in their system, in the organizational system, as well as individually. And then they have to show it to the people. And if they can show it to the people, I mean, it's not going to be simple. It involves the entire system. But eventually we can go back to the actual definition of education that I give, that education is the production of desirable change in human behavior, skills, and attitude, so that it produces human behavior, which is desirable. So that produces human attitude, which is desirable, and I'm talking about desirable for the society, then the society, entire society itself is better off. So that's what I think broadly the role of education should be in terms of mitigating or reducing. I'm not talking about completely eliminating, probably that will be impossible, but at least there should be some degree of mitigation. And in my understanding, education system, including all educators, should be playing a central role in that. And every other areas who are involved in the education system, government, private sector, non-government, families, parents, everybody, when they are aware of it, I think we can build a better society in that. So with that, I will just stop myself. Thank you all very much for giving me the opportunity. If there is any question, I'm going to be here. I'll try to answer to the best of my ability. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Shahidul Islam. Thank you very much for your presentation. We'll be mindful about time because our time is still 9:35. That's our time that we already think. So we will be our next presentation try to be by 5 minutes or so. And then we'll have some time at the end. Probably we'll have some discussion. So our next presenter is Ms. Parveen Akhtar. She is the president of Bangladesh Canada Association of Edmonton. I will request her to be brief and just discuss some challenges what communities are facing. And then at the end, probably we'll discuss if we have any questions. So thank you very much.
Good evening, everybody. Is my voice is okay, Edward? Good evening. I am Parveen Akhtar, President of Bangladesh
Yes,
Canada.
you can go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I am Parveen Akhtar, President of Bangladesh Canada Association of Edmonton, BCA. Also, I am working at Grenan Hospital as a dietitian, maternity section. There I can learn lots of multicultural and lots of diversity and everything. I am enjoying with my patient, with my maternity newborn baby and mom. Thank you, Edward, for having me. Racial discrimination is still existing today. Law enforcement has done very little to prevent racial discrimination and inequality. Bangladesh Canada Association of Edmonton, BCAE, is an organization that promotes racial tolerance in our community. As a community member, I have noticed that our people sometimes are involved in unfair treatment of other, but they do it unintentionally. Lots of the time we do it without knowing that is appropriate for multicultural society. And we know Canada is a multicultural society. In a multicultural society, people from all over the world with different color, sizes, ability, food habit, and belief live together as a community. Now question again, what are challenges we are facing still? We as a parents are not giving time to our children, not enough. We are not talking with our children. We are not teaching our children about the fundamental subject, the origin of human being. That is our fundamental subject, the origin of human being. We need to teach our children about some common issue, respecting people, loving people around you, loving people of all color, loving people of all sizes, loving people, all hardworking people. We as a human being, we are equal, but our opinions are different. We need to respect others' opinion, but decision should be made based on democracy. As a community member, I think one of the greatest challenges, we ignore racism. Therefore, we are behind. Provide proper education regarding racism to our children. And I should say education in the elementary school. When a child in 5 to 10 years, that is time to need to teach them about diversity in our society. We know diversity is natural. When our children go to university level, they study a lot about racism, but I think it is too late. As family members, we should teach our children that we live in a multicultural society. Here, everyone is equal. Everyone is unique, but they should learn to respect and embrace others so they can grow up in a influent society where no one is targeted for being different. That is our main goal. Thank you, everyone, with me, and we have to work together and face this racism and our very next generation. How can we work together? Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Parveen Akhtar, thank you very much for your speech. It was very inspiring, and also we need to work together. Thank you very much. The next presentation will be presented by Mr. Monwar Khan, anti-bullying activist and Governor General's Caring Canadian Award recipient. I would like to ask Mr. Khan to present, and you can use your presentation thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Edward. Just want to make sure that I'm just trying to share my screen. Can everyone see my screen here? Can you see the screen? Okay, excellent.
Yes, go ahead.
All right. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Edward, for having us here today. Good evening. My name is Manwar Khan. I was born and raised in Bangladesh by two lovely parents. I came to Canada in 2001 as an international student. And 13 years ago, I started my journey with the government of Alberta with the community and social services. And I'm very much passionate about diversity and inclusion. I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your busy schedule to attend this session. Also, I would like to start my presentation by sharing a picture with you. So I believe you guys can see the picture here. So this is the picture. On my presentation, I tried to start with this picture. 1953 is the year when Harvard Law School, for the first time, decided to allow women to get admission. I don't know if you have heard that story. The first group of women attended Harvard Law School. They are the women you see in the picture, and they were surprised when they found out that there was no washroom for them to use. They were told that they could use the one in the Harvard Square, but which was like around 15 minutes walk. Anyway, naturally they protested, and a tiny washroom was installed in the basement in the main building. And here I would say that in 1953, Harvard Law School achieved gender diversity, but not gender inclusion. Diversity is all about who we are presenting in the organization, whereas inclusion is who is respected, expected, integrated in the organization. This is the whole piece of it. So the next slide I would like to share. This is a comment. This is a quote I really like, and I would like to talk a little bit about this. Diversity is being invited to the party, and inclusion is being invited to dance. Well, this quote was from Varna Meyer, who's an American activist. It's all about whether I'm going to get chance to dance. Because I'm here, I'm on the floor today, will I be asked? Just a perfect example. You know that I can make up a lot of things about me. But right now, right here, Edward, the host of the event, without him actually inviting me on the mainstream, I wouldn't be able to do that. It would be difficult for me. That's what we mean when we say someone is inviting you to dance. That means you are invited to participate and get involved. You do not have to know all the dance steps, but you are actually got the opportunity to show that what you are capable of. The next slide, I would like to shed some lights on how powerful our cultural lenses are. I went to University of Lethbridge. University is small. Lethbridge is a very small university-based city. At that time, there were a few international students in Lethbridge, and I was the only Bangladeshi student there. So here I am. a brown guy going to the Shoppers Drug Mart to buy Advil for headache. As soon as I entered to the store, everyone was staring at me. Like, well, nobody told me that people would be staring at me there. I was like, what's wrong with you guys? Have you ever not seen a brown guy before? By the way, I didn't say that in loud. Next day, I went to the university and talked to our international cultural advisor. She was a wonderful lady, very helpful. At one point, our data conversion, I told her that this is my experience. And how come I was never told that people would be staring at me in Lethbridge? Well, she said, oh yeah, maybe people are staring at you, Manwar. They have never seen you. I said, really? I mean, and she actually said that, oh, maybe they haven't seen people like you before. And then she said that, by the way, Manwar, we have no provision against staring. Now I know the thing that I brought to Canada with me was completely different. And that was my Asian cultural lens. My perception was if somebody is staring at me, that means it's not good. Either you don't want me, you don't like me, or you think that I should not be here. After talking to the cultural advisor, next day I went back to the store. And what did I do this time? I actually said hi to the first person who was staring at me at the counter. And oh my God, she said hi back to me. She even told me that how nice the weather was. It was awesome. It was actually a real lesson for me about how worldview is not the only, my worldview is not the only view. And this is true about all of us. How you are interpreting, how you are communicating, and how you are evaluating talent, because our culture impacts everything. So in my last slide, I just want to talk about the diversity and inclusion means zero tolerance for bullying and racism. Bullying is not just a learned behavior anymore. It is a social problem. And not only in schools, it's everywhere in community. We find bullying in many different shapes. Racist bullying can range from cause or casual hurtful remark to a physical or verbal attack. Like Dr. Ashraf Ali mentioned in his presentation that hate crime did increase in Canada. There have been several attacks lately against certain group of people in Edmonton. Several Muslim women wearing hijab have been targeted in Edmonton. A mosque was vandalized. A professional hockey player subject to racist behavior for his indigenous background. These behavior are not acceptable. I would like to echo the recent comments made by MLA Rod Loyola, who is with us today. We need to take responsibility. Be careful with what we are saying, because although you may not have the intention of making it sound like it's hate, the people that do hate interpret in that way. And then they go out and they act upon that hate. Well said, Rod. We all need to be a law-abiding citizen. And at the same time, we have to take stand against this kind of behavior. You do not want to be a bystander. Together, we can stop this, and I'm optimistic. Thank you, everyone. And Edward, lastly, I would like to mention that to stop bullying and racism, the primary step is to create awareness among the people. And that's exactly what you are doing by organizing events like this. So thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Monwar Khan. It was very inspiring and it's very thought-provoking. I'd like to thank you very much for your for sharing with us your experience and your things. So thank you very much. Our next presentation will be presented by Mr. Dwayne Peace. He is a retired police officer, and he is also author and education consultant for Life Synergy for Youth Incorporate. Now I welcome Mr. Dwayne Peace for his presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Edward, and thank you everybody for taking time out of your evening to be with us tonight. little history about myself and how I got to where I'm at. I was a policeman in Calgary for 25 years and 9 days, not that I was counting. And I retired in November of 2003. The last 6.5 years I was a policeman, I was a school resource officer. Now, most high schools in major cities have police officers attached to it, working right inside the school. A lot of the rural areas will have RCMP officers that are attached to the school, but they still work the streets. And so the first school I was at had over 51 nations represented in that high school. As a white male, I was a minority in that school. And 2 out of the 4 years I was there, I was voted by the grads to be the guest speaker for their grad ceremonies, which I think all of you can agree with me. It's pretty weird, but that's kind of the impact I had in the school. So as a police officer, I really didn't like doing paperwork. And I really hated it when I would charge a student and they would look at me and go, "Constable Peace, I didn't know that. If I'd known that, I wouldn't have done it." So I developed sessions to educate them so at least they could not say they did not know. And if they did, I'd say, "Nope, you did know, you just chose not to listen. Here's your court date, here's your fingerprint date, or here's your ticket." And so that's when I retired, I took that in 2003 and started working around the country. So I'm from Vancouver to Montreal. I've been to Bermuda 13 times working in schools in Bermuda, Penn State University 5 different times, Princeton. So I go wherever it is I'm asked to go. My process is a 3-hour assembly. And a lot of principals will say, "Oh, 3 hours, this is going to be a train wreck." But they realize at the end of 3 hours, these kids can play video games for 6 hours. So 3 hours, if it's relevant to them, is not an issue. Then I do small group workshops, which is a homeroom teacher and their students. And that's 3 hours as well. So I might be in a school for an entire week working with the student body and the staff. And in the small group session, what they realize is that we all have a story. And if you take the time to get to know another person's story, you'll have more compassion, respect, understanding, and compassion for them. The problem is we don't take the time. And so the small group session is the time. What I'm seeing now with law enforcement and youth is because we're looking at reallocating police resources, there's been a lot of talk of eliminating or reducing the school resource officer program. And I see that as a huge negative. And the reason being is that this is the one area where a uniform officer can make students comfortable with the uniform, regardless of where they come from. You can do classroom presentation in the school, you help coaching the sports, you can get involved in different clubs that they have, but it allows them to see past the uniform, to see that you're a real person, just like the teachers or the professors or the doctors we have here, but your profession was a police officer, not a firefighter, not a bus driver. Your job was a police officer. And so it really helps break down the barriers. Now, in addition to that, when you have such things such as the Calgary Stampede or major events, having school resource officers there is so important because they know who the players are and they can approach those players and their look on their faces, "Oh my gosh," because we know who they are. And we can, a lot of the times, diffuse situations that are about to erupt simply because now they know that they cannot work or carry on their act in anonymity. So I think that the law enforcement in schools plays a huge role. It's also a deterrent. When I'm doing my presentation, a lot of what you guys have been talking about is exactly what I talk about. The bullying, body image, eating disorder, suicide, bullycide, respect, honest communication, the impact of media, including violent video games, texting, sexting, cutting, burning, self-harm, rumors, gossip, drama, vaping, anything that is happening in the student body in the schools, I address because I want to create an awareness for them. We talked about awareness here earlier this evening. We need to create an awareness. I show them how thick the criminal code is, not as a threat, but they don't realize some of the things they're doing could result in criminal charges. So again, getting back to the fact that I don't want them to say, "I didn't know." When administrators have them after I'm in the school, they can say, "We had this guy in here. You can't say you didn't know. You just didn't listen." And then they can go from there what they're going to do. So my goal is proactive. It is not reactive. It's hard to measure proactive in a lot of cases for law enforcement. It's a lot easier to measure reactive, but I want to go with the proactive and get to them before they make the issues. And one of the things that I do is I talk to them about Albert Einstein, and one of the quotes he had is that no problem can be solved from the same level of thinking that created it. So I want to cause them to raise their level of thinking because a lot of the issues they have in their life, they have created. And so if we can cause them to raise their level of thinking, then they can solve the issues that they have created with some guidance. And so I'm very passionate about what it is in the schools, and I wouldn't be able to do this since 2003 if I wasn't passionate. I don't know if that came through here, but I want to make a difference in their life. After the small group sessions, a lot of students' comments are life-changing, eye-opening, releasing, relieving, empowering, motivating. Those are just some of the things that they say when I'm done in the school. So I want to thank all of you for being here tonight, and I look forward to questions afterwards. And once again, Edward, thank you for putting this panel together. It's been very educational. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was very inspiring, proactive, taking actions, and I admire your passion, and you're passionate, and you want to make difference for life. That's great. Thank you so much. Our next presenter is Christy Walker, and she is a mediator and arbitrator, an ARB WFF COUN, and Fresh Start Mediation company in Alberta. So it's your time, Christy Walker. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Edward, and everyone else for being part of this. I've learned a lot from every one of you. So yeah, there may be a lot of numbers or letters beside my name, but essentially my university background is in international relations and strategic studies. I, like all humans, are a member of this planet, and I believe that we're all here together. You want to go directly within Canada, Alberta, and then smaller within the communities. There's no one human being that is not connected to the other. We are all part of our community and need to also participate in our own ways within that. Some of what Edward had asked me to speak on also, so mental health and trauma very much also touches within what I do within ADR, which is alternative dispute resolution. And yes, that includes mediation as well as arbitration or med-arb and any other combination within that. Sorry, I'm trying to go as fast as I can because I know that there's only so much time. Okay, so what am I here to talk about? I'm here to talk about mental health and trauma. What does trauma mean? Well, I mean, that's just a large topic within itself, but it touches pretty much every single person on this planet. When I started learning more in depth about this, I was more surprised to find out that more people are impacted by trauma than are not. Not just in you know, if it's someone involved in the military or a war-torn country, it's in family as well as community accidents, so on and so forth. So what happens when somebody's dealing with trauma or recognizing it, right? Because it's part of the larger communication. A lot of, I think, what we're dealing with often, whether it's what Dwayne was speaking to or any of the others within our group tonight, we're often dealing with people who have been dealing with trauma themselves, and they don't necessarily act or react the way we're taught that we're supposed to be acting within our community. A lot of times our bodies also are taking over, so we don't even realize it ourselves. Recognizing trauma and what trauma actually means is a huge part within what we're dealing with. So what is trauma? Trauma is, it occurs when the internal and external resources are inadequate for coping in short term as well as long term. A trauma can be an event, an experience, and or an effect. So what happens when somebody, like, for example, you're in a doctor's office or a school, you want to be part of this group, there's another individual, they're just sitting there, say, filling out a form or something, and you tap them on the shoulder just ever so slight to say, excuse me, because you want to ask them a question, and all of a sudden they startle and they're yelling at you, get away, don't touch me. That's one reaction of trauma. Trauma can be something completely different. They can be afraid to speak, or they can avoid situations as well. So recognizing it, knowing to reach out and get help for oneself as well as for someone else. There are roughly 3 types of trauma. There's acute, chronic, and complex. Acute is an isolated event, such as being a victim of a crime or surviving a natural disaster or serious accident. Chronic can be living through an ongoing situation, such as experiencing domestic violence or something, the other extreme of war. For a lot of people, a surviving family is a war zone. Experiencing multi-layered traumatic circumstances, like from a caregiver, such as abuse or neglect, or the system itself, or a combination of multiple traumatic events, particularly within childhood. If anyone's been involved in any form of the court systems in the last, I don't know, 5 to 10 years, they've probably heard about ACE or ACE scores, and that's adverse childhood experiences. And it's not just that it only impacts children in childhood, it's a way of measuring the occurrences and the impact of trauma on that individual. And it can be also through epigenetics. So it's genetically already in that individual's body in utero. And then it doesn't necessarily have to have a direct event impacting them in their lifetime. It can already be a seed planted in their body, or it can be all of the above. So why is this important? Well, it's not just in order to help oneself, though that's a huge part of it, or to know how to recognize it to help another community member. It's also systemic within our education system, as well as our courts, from mediation, arbitration, all the way up to sitting in front of an actual judge. And everybody who's involved needs to know about it because of the massive impact that it is continuing to have. I include government within that as well. We can't make change, and we means the people, which means government, can't make change unless we're aware of things. So as I've been alluding to or directly saying, trauma impacts us at the physiological level. Many people have heard about the fight, fight, flight cycle. There's actually more to that cycle itself that I can't go further into it because of our timeline, but I recommend that people do further research into that, because that's such a key integral part to how we individually handle trauma, because it also it helps you understand why one is reacting the way they are. So that can help you, again, in the individual, family, community level. It can also directly help you in the workplace. People talk about wanting superpowers or talent as, for example, a powerful negotiator. Well, this is one small part within that can help within any presentation or corporate deal or whatever one is speaking to. And just in how the brain works through the body and our responses within that. So lasting effects of trauma, I mean, I wanted to go into like the attachment and attunement that people go through, this, struggles to empathize with others, people to also understand you, the person who's already been traumatized. There's the difficulty identifying with others' feelings through verbal or visual cues or miscues or misunderstandings, as well as isolation or trouble developing a safe and trusting relationship. Unhealthy physical boundaries, which goes into a whole other area. All of this, of course, directly links into the topics that we've heard from racism and discrimination, bullying, so on and so forth. So I'll just quickly wrap this up, like I said, for timing. Any Any questions about this, of course, I'll leave my contact information. I recommend reaching out to your family doctor, any community support, whether that is a religious support system to, of course, healthy family, school, and psychologists and doctors, as I was alluding to before. So I hope I can cover more of this later on in our actual discussion, but again, for timing purposes, I promised I would go easy on everyone. Thank you, Edward.
Hello, Edward, everybody. For the interest of time, I'm just going to jump in here. I'm going to try to keep my comments brief. I want to thank you all for such amazing contributions to the.
Hello, thank you very much. Thank you, Presti, for your presentation. Now, this is my honor, and I'm humble to introduce Mr. Rod Loyola, the Honorable Member of Legislative Assembly, Edmonton, Ellerslie. Rod has been also involved in number of other organizations. He's also board of Friends of Medicare, also volunteer for a number of community leagues, and he also in post-secondary education task force and public interest of Alberta. So now I request Honorable Rod Loyola to say something. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Edward. Thank you. I appreciate the introduction. So it's very important that we do the land acknowledgement. So I'm going to say thank you for doing that land acknowledgement at the beginning. It's because it's part of what I'm going to talk about a little bit today. So as I was saying, I'm going to try to keep my comments a little bit brief because I'd like us to have a discussion around the ideas, because so many of you contributed such excellent ideas to the discussion. Now, identifying what the problem is. So when it comes to identifying the problem, a lot of the times we don't take into consideration the historical reality that has been lived before the actual problem has been taken place. And I echo what Manuar was saying in terms of the lens, right? Because when we look at racism happening, or let's say let's focus on one example of the hijabis being attacked in Edmonton. If we look at that outside of the cultural, historical context that is Canada, we ask ourselves, well, why is this happening? This is not Canada. But then when we look at the historical reality of 751 children in Manitoba, and then 215 children in Kamloops, and we tie that back all the way to the inception of Canada as a nation state, then we have to rethink and say, no, actually, this is Canada. And there's been, and we can't take it out of the world historical context either, because the reality is that colonialism has been, racism is the byproduct of colonialism, because implicit in the process of colonialism was white supremacy or European supremacy, right? That within colonialism, Europe was going out to the rest of the world and they were somehow bringing modern values. They were bringing a more efficient economic system, political system, and that therefore the Eurocentric model was in fact, indeed, a better model than anywhere else in the world. And then not only was that imposed upon the rest of the world, those of us who actually come from different parts of the world actually incorporated that colonialism and supremacy within us. So all of us included, need to go through a process of decolonizing ourselves, because supremacy has been such an implicit and direct part of that history, right? Now, what do I mean by decolonizing ourselves? Well, you know, several people on the panel today actually discussed processes, and it's so tied to Ms. Weller's trauma. Like, the colonial experience, and even though it didn't happen to some people directly, is a traumatic experience, right? When you're being told that your culture is backwards, or that your religion is backwards because you know, the women in your religion wear a headscarf. All of these things start to have like a traumatic effect on people, because it's calling into question their own identity, right? And you even see, for example, young Muslims even today who stop wearing the hijab because they've been told, or they've been told by other elements of society, that this is somehow backwards and that the hijab is a symbol of oppression. And then you have other women who are saying, no, this is about my own decision and the relationship that I have with God, and that's why I wear it, right? So it's really important that when we address racism, and then not only that, like actually get to the point of legislation, we need to have this holistic understanding and especially a historical understanding of colonialism and how it's actually created the conditions that we're living right now. Now, what I haven't gone into yet is the whole fact that there are individuals within our society, and I'm not talking about the majority of Canadians, I'm talking about a select group of people who have always been fighting for Canada to be a quote unquote white nation. They've been fighting for this. Since the very inception of Canada as a nation, they've been fighting for this idea, right? And if we don't recognize that that has been a deliberate attempt on behalf of a certain segment of the population, then we're never going to be able to actually address, never mind culturally, but in a legislative fashion, this issue of racism. So for example, in Canada, there are over 6,600 social media sites or web pages directly related to the concept of white nationality, and that it is superior to any other cultural group or ethnic group out there. Imagine that, 6,600. And actually it's even more than actually exist in the United States. So when people like, and I get it, honestly, like good, loving, very equitable, people who are very loving and sharing and acknowledge that Canada is a multicultural country. And if you're not seeing the other side of the coin, you're gonna tell yourself, but this is not Canada. But unfortunately, it is. And so, like I was saying before, if we don't acknowledge it, then we're never going to be able to get past it, and we're not actually going to be fixing the problem. So a big part of it is then outlawing actual hate groups. So, for example, when the Alberta NDP, when we were in government, one of the private members' bills from actually Craig Coulihan, from one of the MLAs in Calgary, was to actually ban all hate groups from being able to register here in the province of Alberta. And some of you may know that, for example, back in the 30s or 20s and 30s, the KKK actually came up into Alberta and actually established themselves as societies under Alberta law, so that they could be a society and that they can actually get donations from people, that they could organize, and they could be a legitimate group and a legitimate hate group, right? They were being allowed to function as a hate group. And so as we continue to deal with the whole legislative piece, this is one aspect that's really important. Something that at all orders of government, we need to establish and figure out ways that we can outlaw hate groups and them actually being able to work inside of communities. I agree completely with Brother Ashraf when he was talking about anti-racism and anti-oppression. And again, we have to link it back to that historical reality. and we need to educate Canadians, especially our children in school, that that reality existed. Because we can't say, well, Canada is a multicultural nation and racism doesn't fit in Canada. Of course it doesn't fit in Canada, but if at the same time our children are seeing that there were 215 and 751 Indigenous children in a mass grave because of residential schools, we need to be able to explain that, take it in and say, hey, this really did happen. We're sorry about it. We're sorry that we allowed it to happen. But look, we need to talk about it, and then we need to talk about how we can make sure that it'll never happen again by actually using anti-racism and anti-oppression training in our schools. And then I would go so far to say that we ask the children to take that education back into their homes by sharing it with their families, and that we build broader discussions. There's so much more that we need to do. For example, at the city level, I'm working with a group of people right now where we're asking for an online portal of the Edmonton Police Services. So Edmonton Police Service, where people can actually put online, they can actually register or report hate motivated crimes online. Because right now, there's a static page that allows it, but it's at arm's length from the Edmonton Police Service. It's not actually of the Edmonton Police Service. So what we're finding is Ottawa is a good example. They recently implemented this, because one of the things is that especially people from ethnic groups, they're very leery to go to the police station, number one, or have a squad car sitting in front of their house. I know I wouldn't want a squad car sitting in my house because the perception of your neighbors is, oh, this person must be doing something wrong. That's why there's a police car in front of their house. And it's a perception thing. So then because of that, people are less likely to report hate motivated crimes. If we had an online portal to do this, we would actually have a better understanding of the hate crimes that are actually going on all across the country. At both the provincial level, one of the things that I'm bringing up with my party, and I'm hoping that I can continue to advocate for, is the concept of anti-racism directorates that actually work on addressing racism and discrimination. I'll also share with you that, for example, the National Council of Canadian Muslims has been asking for a bipartisan committee because, of course, this shouldn't be a political issue, right? And we should have members of all parties working along with people in the community, such as yourselves, to address these issues. So this is one of the things that the National Council of Canadian Muslims is pushing for. And I'm very happy to share that at least one win that we did get over the last 2 years, which I've been advocating for the last 2 years, was to have a provincial hate crimes unit, which we now have. It's sad that it took so long. It took 2 years of advocacy along with the community to get it, but we finally got it. But unfortunately, it was the terrorist acts in London that finally got the government to say, okay, we actually need to do this here in Alberta. Other jurisdictions like BC and Ontario already have a provincial hate crimes unit. But I was happy to advocate for it, and I'm going to continue advocating for more legislative changes. Of course, the strengthening of hate crime is at the federal level, and this is something that we need to desperately work on. And I've been advocating to the provincial government to work with the federal government on actually strengthening hate crime, because as I'm sure that maybe Mr. Peace can share with us, sometimes people go to the police with a hate motivated crime, and then the police member will say, well, according to current hate crime legislation, this doesn't actually fit as a hate motivated crime. So this is why we need to actually strengthen that. So I said I was going to be short, but I hope that wasn't too long-winded. I'm available for more time if people want to stick around and continue to have a conversation. So thank you for your time, Edward, and thanks for bringing us all together. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you very much, Honorable Rod Laola, for your wonderful presentation and some of the information that we didn't know, and very useful information for as a citizen or as a member of the community, that what is going on and what's the work that you are doing with the community. Thank you very much for sharing with us. Because of the time, I would like to request each one of you, if you have any final words, you can share with us. This is the first office series. We'll be continuing this effort, educating our community members, creating awareness. So we'll have more sessions, and we'll be sharing our these sessions as a YouTube video. We will be sharing for public with some edit. So we'll be sharing with you, and we'll confirm with you sending this information. So I would like to request each one of you, if you can say something just or anything that you'd like to share with us before we conclude this session. I would like to first start with our senior most Professor Shahidul Islam.
Thank you very much, Edward, for giving us the opportunity. I think this is an important topic that we should discuss. As I try to allude in my talk a little bit, very general term, that the first thing that we need to do two things. We do need to understand it, and then we do to recognize it. You know, we always think that these things exist, but we don't see it. And because we don't see it, we just ignore it. It's very analogous to the situation that we know that sharks exist in the ocean, but we don't see them. So we can just simply ignore it. The thing is that we simply cannot ignore it. It existed. So the first thing is we need to confess that it existed in the society. Second is how we can deal with it. And to appropriately deal with it, we do need to increase our understanding. And I cannot see anything more valuable than actual education. And I mean, I was arguing for a holistic approach, not like one particular thing, from the beginning to the end, from growing up to become an elderly, from early stage to take responsibility instead of only asking for rights. So the basic education systems needs to be, I believe, revamped in a different way. Our understanding should be different, not like simply in terms of quantitative terms. Rather, we should value the equity, fairness, the value judgment issues that we should bring into the picture. That would be my personal thing. I remember when my children were in schools, I was always arguing with the teacher that, well, whatever the student performs, you have to let him or her know that how he or she is doing. Otherwise, if bad becomes good, good is also good, then first of all, you cannot differentiate between what is good and what is bad. And you are teaching the same thing to the people, those who are growing up. So we are not allowing them to learn. So it's from the very beginning to all the way. And definitely we need to agree that these things exist. Once we know that it existed, then we can take care of it, I believe, if we are properly educated. So that's all. And again, thank you all very much. Thank you, Mr. Loyola, for this very good word. And again, I have to acknowledge your space to the Alberta Legislative Assembly after the London massacre. It was very touching for me. So thank you very much.
All right, now I welcome Professor Ashraf Ali, Dr. Ashraf Ali. If you can briefly share your concluding remarks.
Thank you. We can hear me, right? Yes, thank you. So thank you, Edward, again. Like everybody said that, again, I want to acknowledge that this is the great, I think, session. we need this kind of session more to like deliver more kind of this kind of information to our people and share with those kind of things. So overall, one common thing comes up here, that is we need to make people aware that we need to address this kind of situation, right? So education definitely has an important, it could be an important means, but again, I think we also acknowledge that racism doesn't merely come from like lack of education, lack of knowledge, right? People, those who are racist, they have like higher education, they have doctoral degree, they could be even professor. Like I know in many cases in university, professor actually discriminate. In one cases, there is an instance like a black student was forced to get up because you are not supposed to study this. You have to study philosophy. Why you are studying this science or something like that? It does not go with you, right? So even professor can be racist, right? So even that's why I'm saying like we need to like people, those who are doing racist act, they are doing it intentionally. So how we will do with that education then, right? Education will not work. So we need actually some kind of collective action. So my perspective would be more about the that I also equate Dr. I mean the obviously Dr. Shahidul Islam. That we obviously we need to recognize that, acknowledge that, and like, things exist, right? That means you are recognizing and you are willing to work on. And also Rod Laila, he says yes, we need to act on, right? So it's not just education or teaching and just ideally let it go. No, we need collective action. We need to be proactive. We need some kind of resistance sometimes. White supremacy, yes, like KKK, blood honors. There are dozen of groups like the white supremacist group in different part of Canada, right? So we need to do something like not just ideally providing education. We need to be proactive. We need some kind of collective movements, from legislative to from the community level to legislative level to federal level. So I think those kind of things can over time reduce some kind of racial discrimination that is happening. That's all for me, for my part. And thank you, everyone. Nice to meet you, everyone. And this is the great session. Hopefully, more things will come up in the future. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. Now I welcome Ms. Parveen Akhtar. She is the president of Bangladesh Canada Association of Edmonton. So this is your time, Ms. Parveen Akhtar. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Again, just I want to share one word. How I work medical sector, there is nobody, no one targeted for different. I want to say to my community people, to nice multicultural country in Canada, all of we should not target it for being different. We should be promise we are human being and we should respect each other. That's my word for all of us and for my community. Thank you, everyone.
Edward, can I just kind
All
of
right.
chime in a little bit?
Thank you.
Sorry, Edward, just because I know there's a bit more of a conversation that I think people are wanting to have. For example, Rod, as well as I'm sure others, including myself. And one thing I'd like to bring up around this, there's actually a really good book out there, and it's called How to Argue with a Racist. It's not based on color. It's based on, though, yes, that can come into things, unfortunately. There's many different types of targeting that someone who discriminates intentionally or unintentionally can come across or can say or do. So yeah, again, How to Argue with a Racist. It's by Adam Rutherford. It goes deeper into this around the world, as well as some of human history. Because if we don't, like what Rod was speaking to earlier, if we don't go far back enough in our history as human beings, because we're all linked, we don't, like genetically, we're not that far off from each other, regardless of nationality, right? Because it's nationality and ethnicity, which in part can be nationality, but it doesn't have to be or automatically mean, right? Like there's more depth to what I think we're talking about right now that I think maybe would be, unless I'm wrong, if I'm wrong, please speak up, because I also do not want to offend anyone in any way, shape, or form. But I think it might be helpful for a larger discussion as well, if that's okay.
Yeah, I would love it if we could just go straight to like discussion rather than like final words. I really love to hear from the rest of you though,
Yeah.
because I don't want to take over. But you bring up an excellent point, But please, I'd like to hear from the others before I chime in.
Manoir, Dwayne. I mean, Parvin, I loved your messaging. I mean, you see yourself as a smaller community, Canadian, and you talk within your community about how the responsibility of humanity. I think that's everyone's responsibility, at least, well, no, not at least within Canada. I think within the world.
Really, I don't know about the racism, because which sector I am working every day we are facing 30, 40, 60 moms and baby without color, without religion, without everything. I have to serve to them. Then where is racism? But our main fundamental issue, we want to win. That's why we target it. That's our mental problem. It should not come from family, and it's coming from the elementary school. If 3 years old, 4 years, 5 years old children, if we teach all are human, this is our fundamental. The human can be different way. That is the nature create this way. Look at the garden, different flower. We are flower. If we should teach our new generation this way. We are superior, we are lower, we are up, we did that, we didn't know. Hard worker, good person, everything. Where is law? We follow the law. There is, we can control our anger and everything. But normal life, we need our own law, should build our in. That's our main goal.
Well said. Yeah, because racism doesn't often bring in gender. And we as women, we're often, our voices are separated because we're forced into, not always, but often into different, like based on our outward appearance, as opposed to we are a gender, or those who are gender fluid, right? It's, or you know, go by different pronouns. We need to be inclusive of all human beings. Manoir.
No, I am all those great thoughts here. But I would like to just leave you guys with this thought here. This is a quote from Martin Luther King. In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. So all I would like to say, just take a stand against this kind of behavior. Thank you.
Well said.
I think I'd like to address one thing that Rod brought up, and that is to teach the children and then have them take it home. The unfortunate, my experience working in the schools over the last 18 years after I retired, is that parents hear their children, but they don't listen. So it's like Charlie Brown's teacher, whop, 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 in the background, but they don't listen. And so that's why I do parent sessions, is because I want to challenge the parents on what kind of a parent are you being to your child? What kind of strategies did your parents do in raising you that you said, I will never do this to my kids when I have kids, and now they're doing it raising their children? The only reason I wrote a book, there was no way, if you asked me, you know, a few years ago, are you going to write a book? Absolutely not. The only reason I wrote a book is because parents said after the sessions, do you have a book? And I went, no. Well, you need a book because we want to reference what you talk about after you're gone. So I did the book. Okay, that's done. Then I get a call as soon as I'm done the book. Do you have a study guide to go with the book? Oh, so we did the study guide as well to go with the book. So I react to what is out there. And Rod, exactly to what you were saying, the kids taking it bad is great, but the parents aren't listening. They hear, but they're not listening. And that's why I need to challenge them to come to the parent sessions. But unfortunately, the parents that show up are always the wrong parents, because they're the ones that are hoping they'll get one more piece of gold that'll make them a better parent. The parents who really need to be there don't show up. A lot of the issues that are happening in the schools start in the home and then filter into the school. And then the principal has to call the parents to come and deal with it. And so that's why we have to have staff, students, and parents, community members involved to really address all of these issues, to hopefully be able to minimize it. And like the chart that was shown earlier from 2014 to 2018, there was a significant drop in the numbers of complaints with sexual orientation and disabilities. And I would love to see that for all of those categories, not just those two. So we've seen significant change over the last 7 years, or those 4 years. There's no reason why we can't do that with all the other issues we're facing now. It's just going to take significant education, and it has to go, go, go. And Manoir, I want to apologize to you first. One of the things that I say is that, you know, zero tolerance is zero thinking. A case in the States, no knives allowed in school. A grade 2 came with a plastic knife to spread his peanut butter on his crackers, and he was suspended for 5 days because the policy is no knives brought to school. The mother put it in there, she forgot, but that's zero thinking. What we need is zero avoidance. When you see something going on, you step up, or you cause somebody else to step up, or you step up as a group, because there is power in numbers. But I would say not the zero tolerance, but zero avoidance. And so that's pretty much what I want to say. And I definitely open to some questions.
That was great feedback, Dwayne. I think that it's something that, because, you know, at a politician level, where, I mean, we have our understanding of society and we have our relationships, and sometimes we base our decisions on relationships based on the relationships that we have. So it's great to have your feedback to be really like, hey, this may not work in this particular scenario. So that's wonderful feedback. And one of the other things that I wanted to address too is just like the practice of colonialism in other parts of the world also led to racism amongst ourselves. Let's be honest. I come from Latin America. And in Latin America, the tendency is the majority of the people there are of mixed race. So they're Spanish and indigenous, right? And just like them, I'm one of them. But, you know, for me, I'm pretty white passing. People look at me and they're like, oh, this guy's a white guy, right? If they don't know anything about my Latino heritage. In Latin America, because of the colonial process and because of the supremacy of the Europeans, what ended up happening is that it created this level of racism. It's like in Spanish, we say, oh, there's always someone who's a little bit darker than you are. You could be dark, 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 but there's always someone who's a little bit darker, right? And this is where we internalize that racism. So I think that for a lot of us, we need to go through the process of decolonizing our mind from that understanding that somehow one particular group and their supremacy was best for the rest of the whole world. And that and then when we think about diversity and inclusion, and we can think that there are so many different political, social, cultural systems out there, and they're all valuable, and that they all have something to teach us, right?
One thing, like to ask you, sorry, on kind of a separate note, but within the larger topic. And for someone directly in our legislature, there's been, I've heard between 70 and 85% cuts on our courts. This directly impacting another separate direct cut in ADR, so alternative dispute resolution. That doesn't mean that it's only the courts, but a huge part of what you're also discussing doesn't necessarily need a police at a door, and it doesn't matter what family it is. The majority of families are not comfortable with a squad car unless that's a family member coming to visit them in front of their house, right?
Yeah.
Because they're afraid of the neighbors saying something or whatever, right? As you said, but with like one of the things, like mediation is over, as far as we know, it dates back at minimum 500 years ago. At its most basic, that's the community level dealing with conflict or issues of all types, whether it's, farmers to, the banks, whatever. The only thing that, at least presently, it doesn't deal with is criminal matters. That's more resolution. So how do you think measures like that, as well as anti-bullying and other education programs, or like what Dwayne does presently, can help, or like the government recognize the need, the save on expenses in pretty much every area by helping to fund and support these programs?
Well, yeah, and the other side of the, okay, I just wanted to check if I was on mute. The other side of that coin, of course, is the fact that in our democracy, we like to think that we are so advanced, but one of the negative factors of our democracy is that not everybody has equal access to the legal system. And what you're describing is perhaps a way that, well, does everybody need to go through the court system in order to get justice? So it's a really interesting question that you ask, because I honestly think that well, how we would set something up like that to actually deal with matters. Like, I mean, I believe that in the past, like as you go into our history, it was done more kind of semi-formally, right? It was just kind of like, well, we'll try to get these people to work out this problem so that we don't have to take it to a higher level order of government or something like this, right? But I think that we desperately need to start thinking about alternatives, because not everybody has equal access to the law, right? And that mediation is definitely something. So it's something that's in the, I won't say it's on the back burner, but it's something that I know it's going to take a while for us to address. But it is something that I'm thinking about, and I'm getting other legislators to think about it as well. Because you're right, we can be saving a lot of money by having people not go directly to the court system.
Well, September 1st, 2019 in the family courts, it's not actual legislation, but it's highly recommended or pushed by judges. And when I say pushed, you get, I don't know, like $500 or $600 off. Do not quote me on this, but roughly. Should someone, for example, be going through divorce and separation, or just parenting schedules? They prefer either some form of ADR, whether that's mediation, collaborative law, or arbitration before seeing a judge. I think it needs to go a lot further, and also needs to go in other fields, not merely, though a big impact on separation and divorce.
Thank you for that contribution.
Thank you. I just want to make one point in response to Rod Laila. So internalization of injustice kind of That's a big issue. I think that could be another topic, because even in our community, in Bangladeshi community, the similar things is happening, right? So when you are looking for a like the bridegroom for your son, you're looking for the white skin, like a lighter skin, right? The same thing in our culture. Like if you have a daughter, she has a dark skin, like it's difficult to give her in a marriage because you have to give lots of dowry stuff, right? So it's culturally things is happening everywhere. So we have some kind of issues our in internal communities, in ourself, in our family. We are biased every day, like every times we are creating some kind of situation that can be considered as a kind of discrimination, gender discrimination. It could be racial discrimination. Could be like the skin color based discrimination, all those stuff. So this is the big issue. So I think it could be another session on that, right? So we are talking about today, like the other group are targeting us, like the Muslim people, they are wearing hijab, all those stuff. So it's a very big issues. Like I teach race and racism for the last 5 years. We have intersectionality, we have class, we have gender, sex, like transgender issues, lot of stuff we can bring in. But I think we need to be on track. We don't go out of that. Like our focus is like the Muslim community or immigrants people are being targeted by a racist group, like some kind of supremacist or other stuff. So if we lost our target, like we lost our policy, right? In terms of like educating ourselves, that's on it part. And in terms of like targeting outsider, like the big group, we need institutional efforts that Rod Loyler said. We need provincial efforts. We need federal government's efforts to address those kind of things. You said 6,000, more than 6,000. You have the website, all those stuff. Those are the big issues we need to focus on, right? So I think that those are all are important point in terms of understanding discrimination, why we are targeting or racism, all those stuff. So first of all, we need to focus on what are our problems. What are the problems? If we can identify problems correctly, we can actually solve those kind of stuff. So some problems we have within ourselves, those on things that we need some kind of different measures, different pathways, different remedies. But for the things that is happening now, like the Muslim girls are being targeted in parking lot, in somewhere else, in hospital or in shopping malls, that would be different, something different. So please just make sure that you don't mix up all those together. So that's my last final point. Thank you very much. Okay.
Good point, Ashraf Ali. Good point. This is. As a parent, can I say one word? As a parents and teacher, they should teach their family member, girl, and student how can sell yourself. This is the very important. This is not skin color, not short, not fat, nothing. I know when I came live in Bangladesh, that time I was 22 years old, and I went to Japan. Different culture, different. I learned from different country, different culture, different community. Just sell yourself. That is very important to give this lesson to in your family. I have a hard time. I have my daughter-in-law. I have two girls I adopted from Bangladesh. I have my own son. They have a very hard time. They cannot go to Bengali community because they don't know Bangla. They don't know my religion. They believe they are human. That's the very big problem. They couldn't find any girl in our community because they are weird. Sorry to say that in media, but this is very, very, very important. Teach your new generation. How can they sell their self? Be smart. No need to higher education. No need to nothing. Good human being and hard worker. Enjoy your life. Sell yourself. That means vocally and active. That is very important. Racism is little thing everywhere, every family, every community, every country, every religion. We are Muslim, but Muslim is thousand kinds of believe. Their dress, their food, everything we facing every day, every moment. But our main goal is we have to teach our new generation how can they enjoy their life very healthy way and hard working and smartly, does not care about skin color, does not about your body, nothing. Just enjoy and sell yourself. Thank you, everyone.
I would like to thank every one of you. Thank you very much for your time, and it was a great session. I guess we'll be publishing 2 documentations. One will be an official YouTube video, and the next one will be whatever discussion we had. It'll be a summary. The summary will be shared with you first initially. If approved, then we'll be publishing to the public. So we'll be sharing with our panelists, and then we'll be sharing with the public. So thank you very much for being with us. And on behalf of Global Academy of Holistic Leadership and in collaboration with Prerona TV, we'd like to thank you, everyone. We'll have more sessions in near future. With that, you stay safe and stay blessed. And good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.